2 and 3 are pretty dense. I have 6 test questions deriving from that. Probably a third of the test is on these 2 pages, and that's not uncommon, especially as we get into these ILMs. So this is kind of sequential order. Remember 403A and Part A and Part B are actually doing the demolition and deciding with the homeowner what needs to be done. So Part A was kind of all the clerical stuff. Get your permits in order, your insurance in order, get a clear understanding of what the client wants, hire and schedule all the sub-trades, get a budget, that sort of thing, stay online or stay on time and budget. And then Part 2 is actually getting the work done. So how do you protect the house? How do you protect yourself? How do you protect the public? And getting all that sort of stuff done. And then 403B is called additions. So I would suggest the vast majority of demo work would involve additions. You're either going to hire a high Mac and tear everything out and throw it away, or you're going to carefully destruct things because you're going to rebuild on the backside, which is what additions are. So that said, page 2, 403B, the first thing I want you to know is planning, and you can write the word prior planning next to that, and that's absolutely key. And maybe all the next bullet points will describe, at least in large part, what I mean by prior planning. So the next one is value. That I'm going to test you on that. Value, by what we mean by value, is you want to put an addition on your house. That could be a small little shed to store firewood, or it could be a 3-story addition for a master bedroom, a kitchen, and a master bathroom, something like that. And there's a value associated with that. It's going to cost the homeowner X amount of money to get that done. And partly of your being in charge, the contractor, you need to make sure with the homeowner they understand what this addition's going to cost, and then walk them through, is that a good investment for your house? In other words, if we live in a neighborhood that all the houses sell for $250,000, and I added another $250,000 to that house, I'm probably never going to see a benefit of adding on to that house. If someone wants a $500,000 mansion, they're going to move elsewhere. They're probably not going to be in my neighborhood. Does that make sense? Does it make financial sense to do what you're doing? I would lead them down that path and inform them of that. They're the person paying the bill, so it's ultimately up to them. But you probably want to have that conversation with them. Is the value there for what they plan to do? Number 3 I'll test you on is structural. So there's a few parts of that. Is the building itself strong enough to do what they're asking it to do? And then subpoints are, can the roof support this? Can the foundation support this? Is the lot size big enough? So in other words, again, the homeowner may have a dream, but that dream may not be realistic, may not be able to be seen through, and that burden is at least on you to open those discussion points. Number 4, we're on page 3 now. I've already covered this, but it's been covered a few times in the book, and it's because it's very important. The onus is on you to let them know nothing is going to match. Nothing old will match anything new. They don't make siding 10 years in a row, like vinyl siding. Pretty much any siding, even wood. And even if they did, they don't have the vinyl siding that's yellow, that's 10 years sun faded. So even if they had the same product, it still won't match. Does that make sense? Even bricks are very, very standardized, but bricks have lot numbers. bricks are like cookie dough. I put in a bunch of mix, I mix up the color of the brick, I put them into a stamp, kiln dry them, all that. But when I add all those ingredients to the cookie dough, I might have a little more red or a little more gray or whatever. And so every lot is different. My point is nothing is gonna match. So you need to manage clients' expectations and let them know when we do this, that's no problem, but it's not gonna match. So if we add an addition onto the house for, maybe say, a bedroom, why don't we look at different siding options so that we're not trying to match it? It looks deliberately separate, but it complements. Is that good for everybody? Okay. Two more here. Number 5 is services. And what I mean by that is if we have an addition on a house, almost always, I would basically say always, we're going to have to increase our services. So that means that the addition, if this is our original house and we're adding an addition, that addition's gonna need plumbing, electrical, HVAC, phone line, Wi-Fi, you name it. I could probably come up with a list of 20 things. And what I have now in my existing house probably won't be sufficient to fulfill the needs of the other portion of the house. In other words, if I have a furnace, whatever it is, say oil-fired furnace, heat pump, doesn't matter. If I'm heating my house here with this, that furnace was scaled to this house for this square footage, not another 25% or 50% or whatever it has to be. So likely the furnace won't be strong enough to run it anyway. Even if it was, you're now running the guts out of it and it won't last very long. So all your services need to be at least investigated. Electrical panel probably won't be enough. How many people live in a house and they know what amperage their circuit breaker is in their house? You know, what's yours is? What is it? 200. Mine was 100, and I got an electric truck, and I had to upgrade to have a plug to charge my truck, and so they came and upgraded to 200 amps. And a lot of houses being built today are being built with 400 amps. So massive amount of electricity. As we go on tours, you'll see many homes that are historic have one outlet in every single room, including the kitchen. If you might not have ever slowed down and thought about it, but if you ever think of being in your kitchen with one outlet, it really wouldn't work at all. There's a coffee maker, a toaster, maybe toaster oven, bread maker, all those sorts of things, blenders, and you have one outlet. Where now we have banks of 4 outlets in any given spot, and they're every 4 feet down the cupboard. And so we're just using more and more and more power. And so I would suggest that all your services would need to be upgraded. That makes sense, right? Okay, the last one you're gonna have to add on your own, bottom of page 3, is number 6, demolition. And you could write after the word demolition, very dangerous. And what you're gonna do is, first and foremost, is protect humans. And second is protect the house. So remember I said that pillar, let's make this room bigger. Let's make a big dance hall, and these pillars are just in the way. That one next to Tyler, I'm just gonna chop that out. Probably obvious for all of you to say, yeah, that's not a good idea. But maybe less obvious is, geez, it's dark down here. I'd love way more natural light. I wanna blow out the wall between these 2 windows. I'm gonna blow all that out and put one big window in. Is the building gonna fall down? I don't know. Maybe. or maybe the answer is, I don't know. And I don't wanna kill myself or you folks or destroy this building. I don't have near enough insurance to cover this building, so I'm gonna bring in an engineer and make that informed decision. So demolition is very dangerous, and we have to be very careful about it. I think I said in the previous lecture, if I had my druthers, person doing demolition would be the most experienced on the team. And usually it's a bunch of high school kids with sledgehammers.
You said number 1, protect humans, and what was the second?
Oh, for demo is protect humans and then protect the building. Okay, page 4 and 5, I've already kind of discussed those. That's looking at the footprint, kind of covering your butt on all those 6 items, making sure it's okay. So we could skip to page 6. And page 6, if you look at that pencil sketch of the house, that would be, you could think of it as the original house. You can write at the bottom of page 6, when possible, I want to make the building square, plumb, and level. I want to make my addition square, plumb, and level to the original house. When possible, make the addition square, plumb, and level. Yeah.
So, if your house isn't plumb and square, are your addition, your plumbing, regarding that the house isn't square, or are
Yes.
you going just with?
Excellent question. So when my house is in school, so I said when possible, so hopefully you wrote that down. When my house isn't square, if I'm going to make an addition on a heritage home, is my house square, plumb, and level?
No.
The likelihood of that happening is 0. Remember us going to, I always forget the name, McKay, the second timber frame?
Max.
Auto Glass. You stood back and you look at the house and it would be 5 degrees. Like it looked perilous, right? Remember that? And so, I'm going to, when possible, build everything square, plumb, and level, and make it square, plumb, and level to the original. But I would suggest, and they are actually gonna do that at Max Auto Glass, is you need to square this up. You need to fix this, because that's getting to be dangerous, and then, add on to that. So there's a bit of smoke and mirrors. So for example, the other side of that is when Paul Coles took us on a tour earlier that same day, and he took us across the street, and remember the downspout of the gutter is hidden behind the corner board, because the corner board is square and level, but everything behind it isn't. So you're a cross between safety and smoke and mirrors. Does that make sense? Yeah.
275 Canada Health Science Center, so they added addition on the back side of it, but that whole front side is so unsquare that, so the back side's square, the front side's not, but they blended it to look square and level.
And Paul, on that same house, he even mentioned how the siding and the windows are massaged in because the courses wouldn't line up. So we're doing a combination of safety and smoke and mirrors,
John?
with the objective of making them plumb, square, and level. Yeah.
You said an engineer is the one who comes in and figures out whether things are structurally sound and stuff?
Yep.
What kind of engineer?
Structural.
Structural.
That we would, yeah, 100%. We do not have the knowledge or skills or credentials to make those calls. Can I tear that wall out? My gut tells me yes, I can. On the pillar, my gut tells me absolutely not. But it's my gut, and I'm talking about millions of dollars, and more important than that, lives. So you just never go there. Structural engineering, of which there's many in that we utilize on the island. Okay, so page 8 and 9. I wish I had a better picture. Let me try to find one really quick. If I'm gonna add onto a house, remember my first piece was talking about is it structurally strong enough? Is the structure able to house what we're doing? If you skip to page 17, just as a reference, and then come back to 8 and 9, we're talking about the foundation. I dug a hole in the ground and made a concrete wall. And that's for this house that we live in now, but I wanna add on outside of that, which implies that I'm gonna dig out more earth outside of that, put a new foundation wall and tie those two in together. Does that make sense? In other words, the addition includes adding more to my basement. If for no other reason, I have to have a wall on a supporting member under the ground that's gonna support the weight of that wall, so I'm definitely digging down, and I'll definitely be tying into the original house.
But, we made that decision, or the engineers tell us what we have?
Yeah, no, well, the vast majority of time, so there's kind of two answers. No matter what, when I build, code says I need to have a footing and a frost wall underneath what I build. In other words, I can't just put a log cabin or a house right on top of the grass out here. I need something in the ground to support it by code, by law. So I know automatically without an engineer, I have to do that. And there's widths and depths and structural loads that are already built into the code. No matter what, I have to have a support. Does that make sense? But then when we get a little more complicated, okay, I want same thing, like maybe we put an addition onto this house, and so now I want to cut this open and put a door there. So now that's not supporting anymore because there's a door there. Is that structurally okay? And that's when we bring in an engineer. So I'm always putting a footing underneath something, and whether I destroy this wall or not is up to me. Okay. So what you see on page 8 and 9 are existing buildings. So that what you see on page 8, you see a concrete wall with a brick wall on top of it. That's existing. That's our original house. And then what we want to do is come underneath it and support it, because we're going to be digging down and pouring more concrete. So we need to support that. We call it underpinning. You can see they've built a temporary wall out of wood that supports the wall while there's no soil underneath it. And then we're gonna backfill that with concrete, etc. There's another one called needling, that's on page 9. And that is an I-beam that goes through the whole wall, so then the house is jacked up on I-beams, and we can get rid of the whole foundation underneath or a portion thereof and add to that. Remember when Kevin was asking, for those that were on the field trip, when Kevin was asking us about the schoolhouse, it was right near the end of the day, and there were a bunch of holes in the concrete foundation that years ago in the 70s, doesn't matter, they jacked up the schoolhouse and they put a concrete foundation under it, and then there's these holes in the foundation, and we said maybe ventilation, and then Tyler came up with a great idea. It was probably needle beams, so I-beams that went through. They jacked the house up on the I-beams, poured the concrete, and then set it back down and pulled the I-beams out. Is probably what that is. You can all picture that. If there's infinite pictures online of needling, if you look online, as well as underpinning. So I'm going to test you on those. Underpinning and needling are both ways of temporarily supporting a house while the foundation is being altered. So then we are into, now we're going to pour new concrete and form up the new foundation and support the old foundation. And when we do that, we're worried about two different loads. It's called vertical and lateral. So, think of a foundation, think if I put that model house on top of a concrete basement. There's vertical pressure, so the weight of the house on top of the foundation pushing down, basically gravity. And then lateral, so if this is my concrete wall, the soil on the outside of the house wants to push in and make the house collapse on the inner face. So I'm worried about both of those forces. Again, maybe back to Venus's question. Code stipulates a lot of things. Here's, if you're building a foundation, here's how the specs it needs to be built to. And or maybe we're kind of off the map and the code doesn't talk about how do I make a big garden door hole in an existing foundation, and we bring in an engineer. So between the two, we're definitely using code, law, or knowledge of someone that has better knowledge about what we're doing than ourselves. Either way, we have very specific answers. And then page 11, so I want you to know about those two forces, vertical and lateral. Page 11, I'd like you to know about new load points. So this is exactly what we were talking about before. If, let's just say 100% it's correct, and I'm quite sure it is, when they built this building, the foundation right there behind this wall is supporting this building. And it was built to code, engineers designed it, it's operating perfectly. And then I want to cut a hole in here and put a doorway in to go to the new master bedroom addition that we're putting on. So when I cut that hole in, the weight of the building above us still exists. Let's just keep it really simple and say it's 1,000 pounds. So every 10 feet holds 100 pounds of wall. And then I pull out this 2 feet of wall, that 1,000 pounds still exists, it just has to be shifted around. So we call new load points. I have the same amount of load, the same amount of weight, but I have new load points. The wall is now, less wall is now supporting more weight. Does that make sense? And that picture on page 11 kind of shows that. That dark gray foundation would be the foundation of the new addition, and that hole, that opening, would be something we cut into the old foundation, but the weight of the original house still sits on that old foundation, and the weight still remains the same. So I'm putting new load points. I'm asking the old foundation to do more work. So you can see that bar across the bottom of the foundation and the top where the hole is for the opening. You can call that a lintel, L-I-N-T-E-L, L-I-N-T-E-L. And the lintel, you can write next to it, is basically a bridge. I'm spanning an opening and bearing the weight on each side, exactly like a bridge we drive across. Does that make sense? Those two pieces, do you know what I'm referring to? Are called lintels, L-I-N-T-E-L, and you can think of them as a bridge spanning the weight across the opening.
So on the top and the bottom, they're both lintels?
Yes, yes, because underneath the bottom that you don't see is a big, what we call a footing, a big concrete, the widest, thickest piece, kind of like an elephant foot. Good? So load points, know that for the test. Page 12, I won't test you on this, but this is a footing. That picture you see on the top of page 12. The horizontal piece is called a footing, and the vertical piece, that's your foundation wall. And that's what's holding up the weight. So page 15, we'll skip to there. I'm making an addition, same thing. I have my house that we live in here, and we want to make a new master bedroom. So one thing I want to be very, very careful of is that my floor heights meet up when I'm done. So I'm digging outside, I'll be digging 8 feet below grade and starting to pour my concrete. And when I come up to grade, I wanna make darn sure that my first floor and my second floor are the same for my addition as they are to the original house. Has anybody ever worked on a house that didn't happen? Yeah, you did? And it went perfectly well and the homeowner gave you a hug? It's a big drama. They're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for this addition, and then there's an unwanted step in between the two buildings. So it's not by chance. We have to make sure first floor matches first floor, old second floor matches new second floor. So how do we do that? On page 15, there's 3 different ways of doing that. And this is kind of old school, pre-laser, modern technology. So the first one is to cut or drill a hole right at the subfloor and poke it outside, and that's where my first floor matches. So I would take a drill bit right parallel with the floor and go outside, all the way outside to the outside, and I would see there's the subfloor inside, so I want my subfloor to land on the outside like that. The next one is to measure from an opening, let's say this window. So I put a level outside, out the window, and I'd measure down from here down, say that's 5 feet 2 inches, and I'd measure out the outside of that off the level and measure 5 feet 2 inches, and that's right where I want it to land. Or the last one you see on the bottom of page 15 is they'll tear the siding right off the house. So basically giving you x-ray vision to look through the wall and, oh, there's the subfloor, and I'll match it up to there. But again, what isn't happening is we just leave that to chance. We have to make darn sure that math is done and that the building lines up. Page 16, when I'm tying old foundation to new foundation, I will do what's called doweling. I'll drill holes into the new and old foundation, put rebar into those holes, and then epoxy them together to make them tie in and be strong together. Those are like, you can think of them as like staples, and they tie everything together, making sure that nothing moves. Page 18, old and new and different materials always move differently. So I know that there's a really high chance that when I have my old original house and my new addition, that eventually cracks will form between those two structures. So I know that and I embrace it, I'm aware of it. So I'm doing things like putting thresholds down. You can see there's between the floor, old floor and new floor. I'll put a threshold piece so that if they move on a micro level, you don't see the crack. I'll use big pieces of trim around the top, crown moldings, chair rails, whatever it happens to be, to tie in. Often I'll use a casing. If this is the old original house and that's the new, I'll put a door, at least a doorway, maybe a door, and I'll tie in a casing. And in behind, the walls are moving at slightly different measurements, but the trim out front looks pretty the whole time. So I'm aware of that. I kind of take ownership of it and embrace it, and here's how we move forward. Page 19, so I'm gonna test you on that. Use trim to hide potential cracks. Page 19, so now we've formed up the hole in the original house, formed up the new foundation. We have the foundation. And then on page 20, you can see we're back to lintels. So now on the second story, I need to add lintels. I'm altering those point loads again, not just in the foundation, but all the way up through the whole structure, first floor, second floor, third, however tall building is up into the roof. All those point loads have to be adjusted. With lintels, and they're spanning that opening exactly like we wrote on the previous page. Page 21, when we talk about putting those fillers in to hide the cracks, we're gonna go one sneaky step further. And when we put that casing on, let's just go back to the example. This is my old house, that's my new house. I'll put a casing here knowing that those two walls are gonna move. When I fasten the casing, I only fasten to one side. So that when those two walls slide and move, the trim in one wall stays solid and the other moves, and everything still looks great on the outside. Is that good? Test you on another concept here, page 22. When I'm making additions, I of course have to tie everything in together. We started with foundations, then we went to walls. Now we're up to the roof. I have to tie those roofs in together and make sure the whole structure is waterproof. So the way we do that is we keep the existing roof as much as possible. You can see that is on the right side of the picture on the bottom of page 22. And then we add what's called valley trusses on top of the existing roof to make that secondary roof. Do you see that? The little triangles getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that gives the roof valleys and hips and trusses and ties everything in together.
What about if you have, the thing between the roof and your house? I think,
That,
yeah,
so how do you have an attic space with the valley trusses on the front? Typically what they'll do is add those valley trusses. They'll have the sheet, they'll have your trusses, the original trusses you see the bottom right of the picture on page 22. Then they'll put sheathing on, that's all that white surface. And then they'll put the valley trusses on top of that. Is everybody with me so far? You see that? And then what someone will do when they're in the attic space before it's all finished is take a saw and cut out a hatch big enough for a human to get through to go from the existing roof into the valley truss. And really, as long as everything goes well, which is a big statement, we won't have to access any part of that attic unless there's a major problem like a leak or something like that. So we really only need to gain temporary access, blow-in insulation, leave and never come back. I know that's a bit of a lofty statement, but that's the idea. And that's why there's not stairs or a big grand doorway. It's just a hatch. It's just a hole cut in the plywood. Is that good? Yeah, page 24, there's siding, two radically different types. And in my opinion, that's exactly what you want to steer the client towards. Don't try to camouflage old and new. You'll probably never be happy, not you, but the homeowner will probably never be happy. So embrace that change and have two different textures. Wood meeting metal, wood meeting brick, something like that. You can see on the on page 26, I won't test you on this, but lintels, there's a couple different pictures of lintels. One is just two steel plates that are bolted together, pinched with concrete on the inside of it, kind of a steel bread and concrete meat sandwich. The other one has L brackets that hold, that also give supporting weight for that. And they're both lintels. Which one would I use?
the L.
Whatever the engineer tells us to. That we're off of the code. Code wouldn't tell us what we need, so we would use an engineer to help us answer that question. And there's more than one right answer, but the right answer is we use a professional to tell us what to do. Number 28, I'll ask you about this, but it's fairly rare. One way of doing it, so basically the whole book, we talked about expanding outwards and then up for an addition. One option is expanding just up. I've only ever seen it once in my life out in Summerside on Pope Road. But you basically build, you keep your house existing, the single-story bungalow or whatever it happens to be with a roof. Then you build the sides up around it to make a second story. Then you put the new roof on top of that and destroy the second roof. Does anybody know why we go to all that trouble and expense and problem?
So you don't have more space?
You definitely wanna add on because you want more space.
No, but because you don't have more area, like,
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I never even thought about that. So your footprint, the lot, the grass lot that you own doesn't allow you to go outward, you have to go up. So yes, that's absolutely, I wasn't thinking that. Braden, go ahead.
I would think it would be more energy
Energy
efficient.
efficient, I don't know about that, maybe, I hadn't thought about that. I would think that all the demolition and all the trouble, it's pretty inefficient just for that 2 months while you're doing the work, but.
in the case of the roof, I know here you house, entire house, what about if you just take the roof, put it up, build the second floor, and put that original roof on the top?
You could. Did you all hear that? How about if I tore the roof off, built the second story on, and put the roof back on? Very costly because crane would come at least twice. And depending on the size of the roof, you may have to cut the roof up into sections and then tie it back together. Certainly possible, but would be very expensive.
You need this game, like the weather and stuff.
Start
If
over.
you were to do what you just said, you need a big risk. Put yourself in a hole more than likely, because like if it rains, well, the roof's already off, and you're building through.
Yeah, and you're kind of answering my question, why would you go through all this drama to begin with? Did one of you have a comment?
I didn't
Why, so the whole booklet is about expanding out, and then this one's expanding up, and one sneaky way to do that. I have a single story house with a roof, I leave everything intact, build up the second story, and then put a new roof on, and then tear the old roof out. And why would I go to all that trouble? So the main reason is, economics, and to be honest, I don't know if it really, does make economic sense, but the idea behind it is, I can have my family live in the original house, have carpenters build up the second story, carpenters put the new roof on, and the whole time we're warm, dry, living in a home, and then tear the roof out, and then they could rebuild the second, or build from scratch the second story. Minimal disruption to the family, and my house is continuously livable, is the reason why. But I've only ever seen it once, so my gut tells me it's way more expensive than the concept.
Seems like a lot of contractors would always prefer to tear down and build new, but it would be probably more sustainable, even if it cost more to
Yeah.
just add up instead of tearing it down and starting new.
Very good points, let me get to that in 1 second. Have you ever seen that edition that we saw?
Tension Road, they did that.
Oh, did they?
10 years ago.
Yeah, was it the same reason?
I wasn't involved in it, I was watching it.
Yeah.
There's it's kind of like a Mansard roof on it there now, McKenzie Road, just past the co-op. So if you're driving that way, it's on the left-hand side.
Oh, yeah, it's a
yellow.
concrete building,
No,
something weird?
so it's weird now, they're
Yeah.
kind of like a turd in the front.
Yeah.
So they did that, so they're still living in the house. They put this Mansard roof on the top, and then they got to the inside, and then put a second story.
Yes. Yes, I remember.
Yeah.
So to Mandy's point, for 100%, the greenest building, the most environmentally friendly building is one that already exists. So we talk about embodied energy. It took a ton of energy to make these sheets of plywood and run the saws and make the screws and all that sort of stuff. And that energy's already there. We already, as a species, we already spent this energy. So this house is the most energy efficient because we've already got it, and if we could reutilize it, all the better. So then it's a matter of economics. Can we make it energy efficient? Does it fit the size of your house and the needs you have as an individual, something like that? Does that kind of answer what you're getting at?
Just that it probably uses less materials than
Yeah.
starting fresh.
Yes,
Even
totally.
if it
Uses
costs
less,
more.
and I think I was saying the same thing. So
Yeah.
it uses less materials because these are already used instead of using a whole nother batch of materials. And insult to injury, if I make a whole nother house with new materials, this one also ends up with a it's kind of twice as good or twice as bad. The scales tip way one way or the other. Good? Okay, you have about a half hour. If you have, personal work, great. If not, we would like to continue on these racks. There's probably another hour or so on that, chopping